and welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashely Liliana. So today's video, I just kind of want to have a chat about what to expect when living abroad. The reason being is last week was quite a bit of a difficult week, and it kind of made me think about this blog post that I actually wrote about 5 months ago called The 3 Emotional Costs of Moving Abroad. The idea behind that was that we often talk about the logistics of moving abroad, the financial kind of like startup cost, or the money that we need to save when we do move abroad for any kind of emergency. We really don't talk about, I think, what it is to expect from an emotional standpoint. Things that you experienced, what are the emotional things? That's Kedma. Say hi, Kedma. Take the emotional cost of moving abroad or just living abroad. Like, what is the emotion, right? We know this like chart. I'll put a better one. We know culture shock, right? Like, this is what they teach you. But what are the things that you go through, that you feel? What is the emotional aspect to it? What are situations that cause these things? I want to go through different kind of emotions and things that happen you experience when you're living abroad, and some things that have helped me through them and maybe will help you. Before I continue with this video, I just want to say that this video is not about feeling pity for me or for anyone else who decides to kind of pick up their life and move abroad. That's not what this is about. This is just to show you the other side of living abroad. The first emotion, feeling that I want to talk about is loneliness. And I think that this comes about for everyone in different ways. Personally for me, I had moved to Santiago back in 2019. I picked and decided to move in with some roommates that were older than me, and the reason why was because I sacrificed comfortability for price and location of the apartment. They weren't anything big, but I just felt very uncomfortable and I never really connected because they were a lot older than I was. And then there were people coming in and out that I never knew, and it was this whole thing. But I think in combination with working now about 2 months into the job and integrate myself in a team that had worked together for like 3+ years, and they were like an actual family, trying to build that relationship and that closeness with people who already had built that bond over 3 years or more with someone who was only going to be there for a year because that was the contract. I think, why would they put so much effort, in trying to build that? And so that, amongst, trying to find friends and getting that support system and navigating life abroad, became quite lonely and very isolating to a certain extent. That is definitely something that I think I knew was a possibility of experience, but I didn't realize how long I experienced that, and how much that would play a toll, I think, on mental health and a lot of different things. I would say to that, and if you're feeling that or you're concerned about friends, and I think all of those things kind of play a role, trying to make sure you find like that place, that those roommates that you're comfortable with, that you really connect with, in a space that you feel comfortable in, is really, really important. And I know that there are a lot of groups. If you're going to teach English abroad, like I did, there are a lot of program groups that you can be a part of. A big thing for me was I wanted to live with a Chilean because it was, for the language and for the culture and many things. It was my intention, and I tried it, and it didn't really work out for me the first half of my experience abroad. But things happen for a reason. I ended up living with actually my really good friend 10 minutes away from the apartment that I was living in. And another thing is to join those Facebook groups, and there's also expat groups that have just expats that are living in that particular city or country that you're in. You have to be very proactive in your search of finding friends, of being a part of the kind of everyday life, society, and all of those things. It's not like in a movie, or TV shows like Emily in Paris, where like, you bump into this person buying flowers, they're your best friend now. I'm not saying that it won't, but chances are it might not happen. You have to be really proactive in kind of finding that support system, or relying on the support system that you do have, and helping each other get out there and meet other people. Proactive is quite difficult to a certain extent if you're definitely someone who's shy and introverted, like me. But I try to remind myself that already moving abroad is pushing myself out of my comfort zone and out of my comfort level, that I just have to keep pushing just a little bit more. And being proactive is really important. And your friends and your support group in a new country is not going to fall out of the sky. What do the kids call it? FOMO? Fear of missing out. And although I actually didn't really experience that like the first time as much, I definitely feel it a little bit more now that I am here in Santiago. I think with just the pandemic restrictions here, and then seeing like friends back in New York, out and about, you definitely start feeling like that FOMO just a little bit more. And you know, you fear missing birthdays and holidays and special moments, or the small moments, the ordinary moments, and can really impact, I think, also your experience abroad, because you feel like, why am I here and not there, right? And the reality is that yes, you are missing out on those moments, but you're also living a really great kind of life and adventure too in your life abroad. And so I would say, and what has helped is make the time and the effort to catch up and talk with your friends. I think even with the pandemic, we've gotten so used to Zoom and things like that it's kind of almost second nature now for us. But use like those tools that you have to be connected with your family and dedicate that time. You share your experience and you ask them about their experience, so they are included in your life here, but also you're included in their life there too, so you don't feel like you're missing out as much. But also be present. That's easier said than done, I know that 100%. But it's really important to try to remember like where you are. Times like I sit here and like I look out at the balcony and I just like see the mountain ranges and I'm like, I'm here, right? I'm seeing something different, I'm living something different. Try to bring myself back to the present moment and remind myself that I'm also living something really interesting and wonderful and new, and it's a different experience, and that really kind of helps offset this fear that I'm missing out back home. So the next is anxiety. And this is a little bit more personal for me, and I think the broader thing would be mental health or even mental illness if you struggle with it. I've always struggled with anxiety, basically my whole life. And my anxiety at times can be crippling, very crippling actually. It doesn't stay back home, right? It follows you and it comes with you wherever you go. Even sometimes it can amplify, and it's crippling. Some days it's pretty bad, like it was last week, and other days I'm managing it and I'm perfectly fine and I'm okay, like today. I think this is definitely unique to each individual because different things work for different people, and so it's not like a one size fit all. Like what works for me and how I deal with my anxiety is not going to work for you or for someone else, right? But I'm just going to share what works for me, and maybe you get something new out of it, or you have something else that really helps, so you can leave that down below for someone else. I tried to create like a really basic routine. I've always been like such a person that hates like anti-routine, but as I've gotten older and as I've traveled more, I've really found that routine is actually quite important in dealing with my anxiety and also actually being more present and enjoying kind of where I'm at. So I always start with my cup of coffee every morning. Maybe there's a second one in there at some point in the day, but when I set a routine and I have like simple things, like it is making my cup of coffee, and lately I've been doing yoga throughout the day because it kind of helps me with like meditation and being in the moment and shutting off my brain a little bit. It really helps kind of keep certain things predictable throughout my day, and that really helps kind of manage my anxiety day-to-day basis. For me, other things that I like to do, listening to audiobooks. You have to find what works for you. With that is, some days are just really hard, right? And some days those things do not work for me. Maybe just the coffee and that's about it. And for example, last week the government added more restrictions and actually closed borders and couldn't leave in or out of the country for about 30 days. And just kind of trying to figure out what to do and what's the decision I have to make really just increased my anxiety quite a bit. You know, give yourself permission to be kind of in that space and not be like at 100% all the time. Like you don't have to be so present and enjoy everything and be like, oh my god, I'm in another country, I'm supposed to be like happy and present and enjoying this. No, it's okay. There are just some days that are just not gonna happen. It's just not gonna work. You do what works for you. Also give yourself permission. Some days are just not going to be the day to be present. I would say that before you're moving, have like some sort of plan that you can adjust and be flexible with. Coffee break number 2. But the last, specifically, I think it's this fear of the unknown. It goes along with this whole video of like, you know, what to expect. Life happens. The problem or the thing is that when things happen back home, you know what to do. You know how to problem solve. There's a way to solve that problem immediately. But when certain things happen, it happened in another country, right? In the country that you're living in now, you don't always know how to problem solve. You don't know where to go, who to contact. How can you contact? What are the options available? Can you even communicate with the people in the country to explain your problem and then to hopefully get a solution? I think all of those things really cause like this fear of not knowing what to expect. How are you going to solve that really cripples people kind of in their decision of moving abroad. Things happen, like maybe, you know, your building where you're living in Bali with other volunteers gets infested with bed bugs. Your phone stops working about a month in and you have to figure out how to get a phone. I actually have it here, and then you have to live with this for 2 months and try to figure out how to use this lovely phone that didn't work really for calls or texts or taking photos or videos or anything like that, or your phone gets stolen, you know, and what do you do then? It happened to me too. Or there's a social uprising and you're not really sure what's happening or how long it's going to happen for, and the protest and the cops and the military are basically, it's all happening outside of your apartment door. Or you're living abroad during a pandemic and the world goes upside down. You're not sure, and you're not with your family or your friends and you don't know, or you moved during that time. Restrictions are constantly changing, and so what you thought was going to be isn't, and what you can do suddenly is something you can't do, and things happen. Life happens no matter where you go. And when you're abroad, sometimes those things can be extra scary because you don't know how to solve that problem or what to do. You feel isolated, maybe you don't speak the language that well, and so all of those things are kind of amplified when you're abroad. I think we kind of have this like fight or flight response where either we want to just like deal with it, or we just like want to throw in the towel and put our hands up and be like, I'm going back to my home country, because you have that privilege of leaving and going back home. Things that I would say first is, and what I told myself and what I actually told myself last week is, take a breath. The second thing is, don't make a decision that's based in fear or frustration. I almost did, right? Last week when borders closed here for a month and I wasn't sure if it really was going to be a month, maybe more, and what do I do? It's too much, I'm gonna go home. All right, but I had like 3 days to decide. And then I told myself, reminding myself of my own tip, right, is, okay, don't make a decision based in fear. With that, I want to say is, you know what's best for you and your own mental health, and what's the right decision for you. These are just guidelines that work for me in a situation. There are times that 100%, I agree, it's time to go. For your own safety, for your own mental health, I think it's time. And you know that, and you have to go with that. And the third thing is that I always actually tell myself, and I've done this a few times now, is remember your why, right? More likely than not, if you are living abroad or about to move abroad, it's because you decided that you want this adventure, right? And you want this, you know, excitement and this experience of what it is like to live in another country. You have to kind of have like this honest conversation with yourself, even before you leave, knowing there are things that might happen overseas. Are you willing to experience everything, even the really bad parts, or the really scary things that might happen, or the really unexpected things that might happen that you're not sure about? Are you willing to deal with it and work through it and get through it? But if you're in it, try to remember why you left in the first place, right? You left because you wanted a different experience, this adventure abroad, and you wanted everything that came with it. And sometimes everything that comes with it isn't always really fun, exciting things sometimes. The big question you're probably asking yourself, or at least I would, is it worth it? The short answer is yes. The long answer to that is, life and living abroad is filled with challenges. It's not just that TikTok video of 30 seconds showing you a highlight reel. It's also the challenges, the newness, the anxiety, the fear, and the loneliness that is experienced in between those moments that makes the experience. And dare I say, sometimes even enriches the experience. But do not take my word for it. Go out there and see for yourself.